An armed terrorist group commits a horrible crime in a Al farm in Hama countryside on the eve of a Security Council meeting. Competent authorities foiled a suicide bomber from blowing a car bomb in Sanamin, as they also block an infiltration attempt from Lebanon and Turkey. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization stresses rejection of military intervention in the Middle East and North Africa. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our news for today. An official source in Hama Governorate has dismissed as categorically groundless reports by certain news media involved in shedding Syrian blood about what happened in Al farm in Hama suburbs. The source said in a statement that an armed terrorist group committed yesterday morning a horrible crime in the aforementioned farm, claiming the lives of 9 women and children. The source added that after the crime, the residents of the farm appealed to concerned authorities and the governorate to interfere for their protection and hold the terrorists' crimes. The competent authorities headed to the farm, stormed the terrorist group's hideout and clashed with them, killing them and confiscating their weapons, which included RPG launchers, machine guns and hand grenades. On the other hand, a Syrian official source categorically denied news about preventing UN monitors from entering into Al farm. Meanwhile, 2 law enforcement personnel were killed and 5 others were injured. Forensic examination revealed that the killing took place at 10 a.m. Wednesday morning during the presence of the armed terrorist group on the farm. This crime, executed by the terrorists on the eve of the Security Council session, was meant to be taking advantage in order to put more pressure on Syria and trade with Syrian blood. Competent authorities in Daraa were able at dawn today to foil the attempt of a suicide terrorist to detonate a booby-trapped car at the highly crowded Al-Mahatta station in the city of Sanamin. The car was parking at Al-Mahatta Square. When authorities suspected the terrorist, he drove away. He was chased by the authorities. Fire was exchanged. The terrorist then blew himself up with an explosive belt he was carrying, which caused his immediate death. The authorities searched the car and found 6 small and medium-sized barrels, which contained approximately 700 kilograms of explosives. Also found in the car was white powder, believed to be the highly explosive safer material, in addition to several tins filled with gasoline. The car is Volvo. Its color has been changed and carries the stolen plate of another white Kia Rio car. In Al-Hrak in Daraa suburbs, a suicide terrorist blew himself up in a pickup car that carried green hummus and explosives near law enforcement troops at the western entrance of the city. 1 law enforcement member was wounded in the explosion. In Homs, authorities repelled an armed terrorist group attempting to infiltrate from Lebanon into Syria near a Deem village in Tel Kalach in the countryside of the province. A source in the province pointed out that the authorities clashed with the terrorist group, wounding a number of its members, while others fled away back into the Lebanese territories. Another infiltration attempt by an armed terrorist group coming from the Turkish territories to Syria at Al-Khirbat al-Joz area in Jisr al-Shughur in Idlib province was foiled last night. A source in the province said that the authorities killed 3 of the group's members and seized their weapons, which included machine guns and rifles, noting that the rest of the terrorists fled away back into Turkey. The Russian President's Special Envoy to Middle Eastern Affairs, Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov, has declared that the Syrian opposition refraining from implementing Kofi Annan's plan to settle the crisis does not mean the failure of this plan. Bogdanov told news media men that Russia condemns such statements on the failure of Annan's plan and considers them unfruitful at all. The Russian official said the world community is committed to a common stand concerning the crisis in Syria, and this has been affirmed by the two Security Council's resolutions that support Annan's plan and approved by the Group of 8 in Camp David, stressing that this is the basis all members of the world community should work accordingly. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization stressed in its final communique following a two-day summit in the Chinese capital Beijing its rejection of military intervention in the affairs of the countries of the Middle East and North Africa, calling for a political solution in Syria.
The Shanghai Cooperation Organization stressed rejection of military intervention in the affairs of the countries of the Middle East and North Africa, considering that the peaceful solution to the Syrian issue through the political dialogue goes in line with the interests of the Syrian people and the international community. The concluding statement pointed out that the member countries opposed the military intervention in the region and enforced handing over of power and imposing unilateral sanctions. The two-day summit statement added that the SCO member states stressed the necessity of halting all acts of violence on the Syrian territories, whatever their source is, and respecting the comprehensive national dialogue on the basis of the Syrian unity, sovereignty, and independence. The statement adopted by the organization's 6 members of Russia, China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan expressed the SCO's deep concerns over the developments in the Middle East and North Africa and hope in restoring peace and stability to the region.
The Shanghai Covenant stipulates a continuous cooperation for the sake of peace and development, seeking to solve problems and not targeting states or other organizations. It also calls on the organization to be open to the outside world. The organization will not form a military or political bloc because the relation between its member states is based on cooperation and not political categorization.
It called upon the international community to respect the principles and the basis of the United Nations Charter and the rules of the international law and independent choices of the region's people. With regard to the Iranian file, the SCO countries stressed that any attempt to solve the issue by force is totally unacceptable.
Back to our local news. Within the framework of the government's keenness to revive classical heritage, the Aga Khan Establishment for Cultural Services has organized a visit to ancient Damascus in order to get acquainted with the reconstruction works it is carrying out in ancient Damascene houses, namely Beit al-Sibai, Beit al-Qutli, and Beit Nizam.
The renovation and rehabilitation of historical and ancient buildings in Syrian cities, particularly in Damascus and Aleppo, have shed light on the necessity to resort to high-quality criteria in the process of reviving remarkable historical buildings.
What you can see right now is one of the unique projects, by all means, not at the Syria level. We are talking about the region level where, at the end of the day, we're trying to revive and bring back to life the beauty about 3 of the most interesting houses. We are talking about very ancient houses. We are talking about houses that goes back to more than 300 years ago. And for that reason, what we are trying to do is to give our respect by executing an international project of restoration, and at the same time create a formula that would help us to basically find a solution for the dilemma. How you can revive a historical location without deteriorating it, without affecting it.
This is a very important restoration project in Damascus. As we all know that the most important thing in restoration is the documentation. Is a very essential part of any process. So for that we start the documentation process in these 3 houses, which are considered as the most beautiful houses in Damascus.
To produce successful outstanding patterns that may serve as an example to be followed in this sector, the Syrian government has introduced new programs and standards that aim at ensuring the most beneficial use of old heritage buildings. For this purpose, the government chose a known establishment in this respect to specify such standards, namely the Aga Khan Establishment for Culture, which represents the cultural arm of the Aga Khan Network for Development.
With this, we conclude our news bulletin for today. For more information about Syria and the region, you can visit our website in English, syriaonline.sy.